Hello and welcome to the HumanWare See Things Differently podcast. Each month, join your hosts Peter Tusick, Rachel Ramos, and David Woodbridge as we bring you engaging interviews from guests, interaction from our one-of-a-kind distribution partners, stories that'll take you off the beaten path, current promos, shows where you can find us, and so much more. So stick around.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good day, good night, good times. Good times, David. Good times, Rachel. Welcome to See Things Differently with HumanWare. How's it been? How's your April going, you guys, as we pre-record this where it's not even April yet?
Mine's going absolutely spectacularly. I was going to say something smart today and say all 3,480 primary nodes are online and fully functional, i.e. the Monarch.
That's a lot of pins, and you got the number right, 3,840. Look at that. Rachel, could you have pulled out the exact number of pins on a Monarch at the drop of a hat?
You know, not like that. So I got to give this to David. David, that was truly champion. You are the Monarch champion, and I applaud you.
Thank you.
I don't even know how you tied that into an intro with your first sentence of the podcast, talking about the number of pins on a Monarch. So I hope we'll have 3,840 great seconds plus of content here. I don't know how many minutes that equates to. I haven't divided it up.
A note from your friendly editor, 3,840 seconds is 64 minutes.
This month, we're going to be talking a lot about talking books, about talking products. So at HumanWare, we have a wide array of products, and we've talked about Braille, we've talked about low vision, we've talked about our GPS products. And this month, we're going to talk a lot about our talking solutions, and we have a number of them. Certainly products like the Victor Reader Stream, which are, the Victor Reader Stream is definitely our most well-known product and has been for a long time, that Victor Reader brand. But we also have products like the Odyssey, which are OCR, or optical character recognition devices. And we certainly have other types of talking book players. And in looking at this and kind of thinking of who can we talk to? Who can we talk to really get a sense of how we integrate with so many different libraries around the world with our talking products. And we do lots with not just libraries here in the United States, but also in places like Canada and Australia and all over Europe. But I was racking my brain, and there is a friend of mine named Scott Norris who has joined us. And Scott is the manager of the Talking Book Library in the state of Michigan. And Scott is here and is going to talk a bit about what it is like to kind of be in this role, because we oftentimes hear about NLS or CNIB or CELA or Vision Australia, and we know and we hear a lot of presentations, but it's really neat to have that sort of librarian or that manager standpoint. Not only is Scott part of the library, but Scott is totally blind, and so I think it's going to be awesome to talk a little bit with Scott. Scott, how are you doing? What's happening? Happy April, even though it's still March.
Well, Michigan State University basketball team is in the Sweet 16, so that's good.
See, and this is why. So Scott is based out of Lansing, and for anyone who's not familiar with March in the United States, it is basketball, college basketball, crazy. Can you talk a little bit about, I guess, just about your role at the National Library Service, just in what kind of services or what it means to you to bring and kind of be such a big part of the library in such a big state?
I'll give you just a tad of a background. I've been as Peter said, I'm totally blind, and a Braille reader, and I started with NLS as a patron in 1964. So, and I was 10. So if you could do some math, I'm old.
We normally joke about how old David is, Scott. So this is good, because normally David's on the chopping block here.
Grandmaster, I'll have you know. Thank you very much.
We provide Braille books and audio books to qualified Michigan patrons. And to qualify for this service, you have to be blind, low vision, have a physical disability that prevents you from holding a book or manipulating the pages, or have a print disability, like dyslexia. And a physical disability could be somebody. It could be a temporary disability. Like, I knew a woman once that broke both her wrists skiing. She fell and tried to stop herself with her hands and, like I say, broke both of her wrists. So That was a fun experience.
Do you find it harder to kind of keep up with because you do have 8 ways? Some would say 8 ways to Sunday. 8 ways that you can, not only receive the book, but you can consume it in so many different ways. Is that hard to keep up with, especially with all the new kind of streaming or sort of on-demand ways of getting books today?
A little bit, but I want to tell you a story first. This is about when Bard first came out in 2007.
And for those who don't know, Bard is what?
Oh, Braille and Audio Reading Download. This is the website that actually where we get our books from here to put on cartridges, and where any of the patrons, Michigan patrons or any patron across the country of NLS can download a book to their computer or their phone, their Braille e-reader, even their smart speaker. It all comes from Bard. At the same time that the first edition of the Victor Stream was released, we got 2 streams. One the library bought, and one I bought from the same vendor. And my wife is sighted, and sometimes she's a little reluctant on some technologies. So I said, look, this thing is really cool. Here, look, I downloaded books to it. I put on this SD card, and now you can carry this around and listen to it. She goes, I don't know if I want to do that. I said, come on, just check it out. So Sonia checks it out, and she says, can I take this to work out? And I said, yeah, you can go try it. That's the last time I saw it.
Yeah.
It's, she goes, this thing's great. So she goes, download some more books for me.
I love it too. I have a friend who he and his wife are both blind, and their sighted children, who are younger children, will use the Victor Reader Stream every night when they're going to bed to listen to their books. And it, I always joke, said they're probably the only kiddos. Some of the only kiddos in this country are going to use screenless devices to put themselves to sleep, or use them anymore. But that is awesome. That is, and I've heard of multiple. Yeah, this kind of, my spouse or my sibling or somebody uses the book when they're driving, and they just hooks it into their car radio or whatever it may be, because the stream in particular has been such a unique way to access content as a push button, interface, and it is one of. It's been a mainstay for reading books for so long.
You know what else I have, Peter? Now the new player's coming out, the new DA2 player.
Humanware had longtime partnerships with many different libraries, and National Library Service is certainly no exception. We were part of the design and kind of the first player, and now we're part of the design of the second or newer DA2, or the digital talking book player, which is, think of it as, for those of you out there who are familiar with a Stratus, that's sort of a desktop player. This is an NLS iteration of a standalone desktop player that will have Wi-Fi, that has Bluetooth, that's certainly capable of giving you a much louder speaker, an experience, bigger buttons, a more stationary experience, and it's a way for you to receive National Library Service books now through Wi-Fi, or certainly you could play them with cartridges, but having a much bigger unit, and that's something we've been working on for quite some time, and now it's out in the open, and we have a lot of folks who are excited, and we do these sorts of partnerships not just with the National Library Service. We've had partnerships with libraries in Canada and in many parts of Europe. We've provided Stratus machines, or for these different libraries, and certainly it's been really neat. And Rachel, you've been a big part of this with me too, in creating some of the user guide and working on the second talking book player for NLS. And I think it's neat because as much as we see the smart speaker, we see the new Victor Reader Stream 3, we have all these new pieces. David, I think it'd be a question for you, and as you kind of look at the realities of Australia, and you've certainly traveled around, what are you seeing in terms of libraries in your side of the world? Are you seeing this, we will give you all sorts of ways to access content, or is it still kind of stationary?
I guess the only thing we really don't have at Vision Australia, which they've got overseas, is the fact that Vision Australia doesn't have an online library system where you can log in via a smart skill and get your book and listen to it. But, the Vision Today Library does have an iOS app, an Android app. You can run it, through a web page. I just like the fact that these days we've got choice. And particularly for some people, I absolutely love the Victor Stratus, because sometimes the Victor Reader Stream has got too many buttons. And I know on the 4 you can hide it with a mask, the buttons that people don't want. And for some people, that's all they need. They just want a player. They can walk in, press a button, hey presto, they can listen to their book. So to me, the Stratus is one of those things that I'm really pleased to know that, HumanWare is continuing it with NLS, because that's very powerful for people that just don't want to know about technology, but they want to have the fun of reading.
Yeah, and NLS had a lot of say in what they wanted to see. And I think the difference, from a typical off-the-shelf Stratus, if we look at for instance, the Braille labels. So Scott, you've seen, there's Braille labels on that device. On the overlay itself, there are different shaped buttons, and just it has taken quite some time from inception to, as any product does, just to get it right. And certainly now, they'll continue through this year as they start to really roll out this new player. I think it cements the fact that we want to continue to provide products, especially in this talking realm. Most of the users of our talking book products are relatively newer to blindness. When we talk about that kind of those bigger players, not all, but many, and I'm sure quite a large amount of your patrons are relatively newer to blindness when they come into learning about NLS and books and things. Is that true?
The patron population that are 60, 65 and older that have lost their vision. And, for some of those people, technology is a real struggle. They lost their vision, and that's where their focus is. And trying to get them to move them into technology sometimes is really difficult. And, technology is like everything else. Some people just eat it up and think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, like David. And then other people, look, I don't want to know about any technology. I just want to get my book in the mail and play the book, and that's all I want to do. Okay, fine. And we have that option for people.
One thing for me, Peter, too, is that, I hate the term because it has the word stupid in it, but for me, it's all that constant term that I've grown up with is, keep it simple, stupid. I just wish we could find another word for stupid, because simplicity does not mean bad. It doesn't mean out of function. It just means it's actually easy to use. You pick it up, use it. You don't have to, read the manual or anything else. You pick it up, turn it on, press a button, and hey presto. So I'm really glad that, for all the innovations that HumanWare's done over the past, 35 years or something, that we've kept hold of that simplicity of our products, and we haven't got into the, oh yes, you've got to have a degree to navigate this device. We've kept that simplicity with most of our devices, including the Stratus.
Well, and the other device I was thinking about was the Braille e-reader that we started sending out, what was it now? Almost 2 years ago. And this is a device that has a 20-cell refreshable Braille display on it. So it has pins that move up and down that create the Braille letters and then ultimately the words. But this device also has Wi-Fi on it. It's got, you can connect it to NLS, to Bookshare, and to NFB Newsline.
And it functions as a Braille display as well with your screen readers, right? So your JAWS, your iOS. And this was something we've been thrilled. I have been so, and this is a US, NLS specific product, and we would love to see this certainly, be successful with other libraries, but the NLS e-reader being able to have a Braille display available to any patron, no questions asked. If a patron wants access to a Braille display, traditionally a Braille display is a very costly investment. It's something that isn't necessarily available to anyone, especially not here in the United States. There certainly are some programs in parts of the world that have made refreshable Braille accessible, but for us, it has been so neat to see the Braille getting, underneath the fingers of folks who are newer to blindness, but also folks who, don't have the means to buy a Braille display for personal use. And it's a great segue, right? I'm glad you brought it up, because even as much as we're talking about talking books or the access to library, Braille is a huge part of NLS. From the music catalog to the foreign collection, there is a gigantic Braille BRF offering, and hard copy as well. I believe, right? You can get one book a month in Braille just sent to you, correct?
Yes, and you can, basically keep that. Now, if we send you a Braille book, then that you have to return. But this Braille book a month from NLS, yeah, you can basically keep the book. I'll give you an example how useful one of these Braille e-readers are. I have a patron up in Port Huron. He goes to a Bible study class for church. So he has one of the versions of the Bible in Braille on his e-reader. And then he creates questions and comments, and he puts them on the SD card that you can pop into the back of the Braille e-reader. And so now he can switch back and forth and bookmark his Bible verse that they're talking about. He can read that, then he can hop over to his SD card and read his questions. Getting one of a Braille display for free is really great. And as one of the two BART administrators for the state, I've seen our Braille downloads jump like 200%.
Scott, could you go back and maybe talk a little bit about Braille on Demand? I just found out about that last year, and I was so excited. I have a Cooking Without Looking book. Oh, I love to cook, and I love to read the recipes. And I was just wondering if you could tell folks about that, how they would sign up for that. Can you get it in different forms, like uncontracted Braille or maybe different Braille tables, or how that works? I just think it's a great resource that folks may not know about.
Basically, what it is you could request a Braille book from NLS, one book a month, and they will produce that book for you and send it to you at no cost. I have not done that myself. I know people that have. Everything done except for some of the juvenile books that NLS does is done in UEB. I was thinking it for something that somebody might want to keep and use over and over again. And Rachel, you just brought it up, that Cooking Without Looking, or any of our cookbooks. Well, now I still have my cookbook here, and I can grab my cookbook, flip it open, and see what other recipes I can come across.
How does someone request those, Scott?
They can call us, and we can do the request process.
So contact your state library to do that.
There's also a website. We can put it in the show notes. That's how I was able to request it. And you can fill out the book and your information, and it shows up at your doorstep a couple days later. It's an excellent service.
Can I ask a question about, as we look to kind of wrap this portion up, on what you think of or where you see, the library going? Do you think we'll see some changes in how books and libraries will work in today's world to give content or create content for or to patrons?
I think and this is just Scott Norris's opinion. I'm not representing myself as an NLS employee or an expert. But I think what's going to happen, I think they're going to utilize some of the either AI or at least some of the voices from Nuance and some of the other companies, and some of those are pretty good, and then just have them read the text. Do a text conversion, text to speech conversion, and that would not take very long. That you could crank books out very quickly that way. And instead of only 4,000 books, you could get 5,000 or 6,000 or 8,000 books a year. And people would have much more content to choose from. And that's, I think, the biggest stumbling block right now is the time that it takes to record books, whether it's recorded by a commercial vendor or one of the NLS contracted narrators. It still takes time, but if you were just scanning text, you could do that very quickly. I guess I'm sort of hanging my hat on the text to speech, but then they could produce more esoteric books and more nonfiction, because we're about probably 2/3 fiction, 1/3 nonfiction, so we could increase our nonfiction catalog that way.
Well, here's to hoping. I know all of us on this call. I think we were all voracious readers, and I know that the more content, the better. Scott, thank you tremendously for joining us. We really appreciate your time, and it's been great to be able to just chat a little bit on the library and the state of really of NLS and what you're kind of seeing in the state of Michigan, and certainly a lot of this can be transposed to libraries around the world. So, again, if you have feedback, please provide it. And feel free to send us an email at podcast@humanware.com. Scott, thank you tremendously. And I believe you may be sticking around for a segment or two with us, but let's hopefully connect soon. And thanks for coming on.
Oh, you're welcome. My pleasure.
Welcome back, everybody, to the cringe-worthy part of the podcast. And Scott has been kind enough to stick around for this one. I love this. I was thinking about, what's cringeworthy? And believe me, there are lots of moments of my day that are cringeworthy. Some are related to blindness, some are not. This one, though, we can all relate to, and many of you out there can relate to this. And Rachel, you and I just attended an extremely crammed, busy, awesome CSUN conference. And you were a rock star at the booth, having a great time as always, as we tend to do. But in that, I realized something all the time, and we had a wonderful HumanWare event one evening, a joint event with the American Printing House for the Blind. And in whether I was at the booth or whether I'm at this event, which is a nice crowded room, I always have this random time, and it happens several times throughout a conference, where somebody I'm talking to and I'm engaged in conversation, and the next thing I know, they're gone. Right? They have walked away, and I think and it's never intentional. But what ends up happening is I'm speaking with someone, and the next thing I know, I ask them a question or I try to continue the conversation, and they're gone. Rachel, did you have this happen to you at all at CSUN? I'm sure you've had it happen all the time, but did this happen to you at CSUN where you're at the booth and someone kind of vanishes?
That does happen. You'll be talking to somebody, I know I have, and I'll just be chattering on about this and that and the products, and I'm really into it. I'm having a great time, and I'm like, so what do you think about X, Y, or Z product? And I get crickets amidst a very busy exhibit hall, but there are still crickets, and I think, wow, I wonder where in my monologue they left.
I think what's funny is, I guess it's what would we want people to do? How can we avoid the talking to the empty chair? Because it is very embarrassing. Because especially when there's a few other people around, and they'll be like, "Oh, he's not there." And I'll be like, "Oh," and usually I'll flip it into a joke like, "Oh, he's ran away again," or "That person's no longer here." Haha. But it's interesting. I think what would we like? I guess Scott, what do you think? Like, have you ever talked to the empty chair?
I've had that happen at conferences, where you're with colleagues, and it might be kind of the end of the day, and you're talking to 3 or 4 people, and then one person leaves, and it's and then another person leaves, and then all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, where the heck did everybody go? Because they don't say, I'll see you later. A lot of times they just walk away.
I always ask, and I can tell when somebody's worked in our space a long time, because they'll say, "Excuse me a second, I'm going to grab this." Or honestly, you really know if somebody's been very familiar with this, because I will have plenty of sighted colleagues say, "Peter, hold on one second. So-and-so just walked in. I've got to go see them." And I am so informed. I'm like, dude, please do. Go over there. You don't need to talk to me. I love when someone will just say, and even if you don't have to say exactly what, I love when they say what they're doing, though, because sometimes they'll be like, "Give me a second," and then they vanish, and I think, like, where have they gone, I love when they're a bit descriptive, or even just say, I need to get some water, I have to go to the restroom, whatever it might be. Holy cow. The amount of times. And I love when it's amazing when somebody does give you that information very quickly, just very quickly, why they're stepping away, how much more how much more normal the conversation is when you don't have to all of a sudden make a joke about you talking to the empty room.
Actually, it was funny, Peter. I was demonstrating the Monarch one day to a group of parliamentarians, and the person behind me actually got their Monarch out, and as soon as this person saw the Monarch, they just took off towards it. They didn't say, David, your colleague's got the Monarch out, I'm just going to go and grab and have a look at it. They just walked past me and kept going, and I like we all do, I just kept talking to thin air. So, and you're right, I love it when people just either just tap you on the shoulder or just say quietly, look, I've just saw somebody, or I've just got to go and grab something, and let you know, and it just takes all the stress out of it, and you end up not feeling like a third-class citizen. It's like this is supposed to be 2025, guys, not at the 1800s or something. So I quite like when people just take that little bit of extra time to say, I just need to go, I'll be back, or I'll see you later.
The light-dependent folks certainly have this complex as well, where they will meet plenty of folks that they can't recall. And so what I'll often do is, even just introducing myself, will say, it's Peter, it's Peter Tusick from Humanware. We talked, last year when I was in for this place or that conference. Even I will do that all the time for folks, because I know they probably know who I am, or maybe they know my face, or they kind of remember me, but just very quickly giving them a quick something to go on. You're right. It's awfully helpful, especially from the context. If I met you at a loud party versus at a booth versus at a professional meeting, it's going to be quite different in how I'm trying to remember who you are and how I know you. Thanks so much, Scott, for sticking around, and we appreciate your time. And I don't know, hopefully we'll get some good feedback from folks as to what do you do. Have you ever had somebody just kind of leave you? There's always creates a good chuckle. So feel free to email us your thoughts at podcast@humanware.com. Welcome back, everybody. It's time for the hot take time. And this one, I think it's pretty obvious, right? We've done, usually we kind of throw ourselves our own curveballs. We talked about Cane versus Guide Dog. We've had some Apple versus Windows discussions. This one, we've been talking libraries and talking products. And of course that lends itself to, why use Braille? The classic argument. Why use Braille? And this, I feel like about 10 years ago, I was often confronted with oh my goodness, we fear that Braille is going away. And I'll say personally, I don't think I hear it as much anymore. I think that the value of Braille continues to prove itself. The access to Braille is more robust than ever, especially with multi-line devices and just digital devices, and having refreshable devices where we can access large amounts of content in Braille, where before we would have to, kind of had that put into hard copy for us. But David, Rachel, what are your thoughts and some of the arguments, obviously, of why do we need to use Braille? So, and I guess the question would be, we have more Braille than ever. What do you guys think? Where do you stand on this? And for some people who are newer to blindness, who say, well, I can do everything through dictation or through auditory means. I don't know. What do you think? What are you hearing? What do you feel?
For people who are newer to blindness and they say, well, why would I need Braille? I would say even just for labeling things, spices, your medications, if you just learn the basics of Braille, it'll be so much easier. You won't have to strain your eyes, and it'll just be faster for you to recognize things. So that's for newer to blindness. And then, of course, for those of us who've known Braille for a long time, sure, speech is prevalent. And Peter and David, I'm sure we use it all day, every day, because sometimes it's faster to just skim through an email real quick. But if I want to learn how to spell something, or if I'm proofreading something, or if I'm studying something, then I'll use Braille every single time, because it's so much easier to comprehend that way, for me anyway. What do you think, David?
Yeah, look, what's that old sort of science fiction thing? When the balloon goes up and everything goes dark type thing. At the end of the day, if your electronics, for some odd reason, and I'm talking about speech here and probably even electronic braille devices, if everything goes offline or you're in a blackout, or where I was a couple of weeks ago, I had a whole blackout for a whole week. None of my electronic devices actually worked unless I went and sat in the car and charged them up. But at the end of the day, I still had my Braille slate. I still had my Perkins Brailler. So when people, we were ringing up and asking, what the local support people were doing for, volunteering for the fire brigade and what was happening and so on, I could still write down my job reference numbers in Braille. Now, if I hadn't have learnt Braille, and I'm not talking about contracted Braille, I'm just talking here about, even just basic Braille, the alphabet and numbers, I would have been absolutely, down the creek without a paddle, because there's no way I could have remembered, about 10 different reference numbers and that sort of stuff. So to me, I sort of cringe a little bit when people who are blind say, I don't have to learn Braille, because I think it's like a sighted person almost saying, I don't have to learn to handwrite because I use a computer, I use a smartphone. It's like, well, okay, fine. I'll take all those devices away from you. How are you going to communicate, or how are you going to remember things? So that to me is the most important thing. It's not the fact that you're blind, thus you need to learn Braille. It's you're blind and you still need a way to communicate if you can't access stuff electronically.
I think even, for us, we all obviously we're very much a Braille-centric company, and we all have access to Braille. I mean, and I love that. I do not take that for granted, the fact that I, yes, get to, have a Braille note or a Brailleant or all of our devices kind of at my disposal. Even if I didn't work for HumanWare, I know I would still have a Braille display. Now, would I use it as much? And I think that's the real question. Probably not. I think that when I'm out and about, I probably would not have a Braille display on my shoulder as much as I do now. That doesn't mean I wouldn't use Braille when I'm working, but I don't know if I'd have it all the time. Do you guys feel the same way? Would you use Braille if you didn't have access to Braille all the time, as we do? And let's say you had to pick a device, you're purchasing a device. Would you use it everywhere you go? Would you always use it with your phone, or would you kind of have it with you and maybe use it 60, 70% of the time?
So if I didn't have access to the plethora of Braille devices I do, which is amazing. I mean, there's a Braille embosser on my desk, which I've recently used to print out lyrics for a little ragtag band that comes over every Friday, and we do
Wait
practicing.
a minute, you're going to sing for us?
Absolutely not. Do you hear glass breaking?
No, but if you're printing out lyrics, you're clearly singing. It was one of those talking songs like William Shatner, where you like, as the moon comes up over the sun.
How about intergalactic, interdimensional? That's about the extent of my singing as a vocoder. But anyway, if I didn't have access to things like hard copy Braille, electronic Braille, I still would have at least one Braille display that I would own personally, because it's just nice to be able to jot down a phone number or to be able to reference something. I may not have it with me all the time as I do when I travel, but I would definitely want to have one in my life, because I do think Braille is that important that one should have access to it if you can.
Yeah, my main thing, I would still have at least one Braille display around, whether it's a full-blown note taker or a Braille display or whatever else, for a couple of reasons. Number one, sometimes, and I've found myself doing this at HumanWare, sometimes you forget how product names are spelt. Now, I always make a mistake with the Stella Trek. I go, is it Stellar? Is it Stellar? Is it two words? Is it one word? And when you're writing stuff to promote something, you really want to get your product name correct. So that's number one. Number two is sometimes I forget how to spell people's names. So for Mr. Peter, I can never remember how to spell your last name, because somebody said to me, what's that 9-dot thing called on the Monarch? And I said, well, it's called the Tusic square.
The Tusic square, yes.
Yeah, and she said, now how do you spell it? I went, well, square's S-Q-U-A-R-E. And asked me about the first bit. Now, if I had that in Braille, I could have just went, no, yeah, blah, 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 blah. So to me, it's very important to be able to, spell people's names properly, product names, other things that you may not be sure of. Because I know one thing that I forgot, particularly when I was learning, and this is sort of I guess a bit of a counter-argument for using Braille in some ways. When I'm using contracted Braille, and I know when I first started learning that, I forgot how to spell quote words, quote normally.
ANCE, words,
Yeah,
right?
K's knowledge and everything else. Yeah, so I can remember my teacher saying, spell the word one. And I went, I know it's .50 in Braille. What is it in? And he went, what? You can't even spell a 3-letter word. It's like, oh my dear. So, yeah.
I do agree. I mean, sometimes, and that is a perfect kind of counter argument, right? Contracted Braille is beyond necessary to save space, but it oftentimes does lead to us not having the greatest command of spelling. And I talk about blind people being terrible spellers, and it is twofold. We are bad spellers. I am certainly an awful speller. As much written communication as I produce, I will double, triple, quadruple check what I'm doing, because it really can be bad. And that's, I mean, I'd like to think I'm a good verbal communicator, a good written communicator, but my writing skills, I think proofreading as well. You brought it up. I have had, and I've thought about doing presentations and redacting, of course, all the names and lots of things of the feedback I receive. And there are some folks out there who make wonderful points, but they do it with such unbelievably bad spelling and grammar, like not even trying to check or have read back. Even if you're using dictation, at least read back what you've written. You talk about my last name. There is a public Facebook post out there where somebody calls me repeatedly Peter Toothache. And now I like that because I get it. And they were very upset, and it was this long diatribe. But it kept talking about Peter Toothache, and they were trying to say Peter Toothache, but what was happening was it was calling me Peter Toothache. And again, if you're trying to send me sort of an email with whether it's criticism of a product or feedback, or you're really upset, at least spell my name correctly if you're going to do that. And I think a lot of times or email addresses, names, phone numbers, email addresses, those quick things, having Braille changes the whole way we are able to confidently read and write that information. So I think it's hugely important. And the fact now that we have services like, we were talking with Scott. I mean, if we look here at the National Library Service, the Braille catalog has hundreds of thousands of titles, where previously I would have those embossed for me, where now I can simply read them on a Braille display. You're having access to a Braille book in real time. That's incredible. It's incredible because even a couple of decades ago, that was seemingly impossible. I think that's huge and great for reading. As much as I love audiobooks and listen, and as much of a power JAWS or iPhone user I am, certainly Braille is still so important to me.
Other thing that's come to my mind more and more now, because I've joined, you guys or us guys at hereIn now for 6 months, I'm doing a lot more travel to the airport, and it's really fantastic these days because I lug around like a 15 carry bag. I've got a 20 kilo case that I've got to lug around. But the nice thing about it, all the lifts I'm taking at the railway station, at the airport, they're all labelled in Braille. Now, for me as a blind person, that's fantastic. But if I was a low vision person and I couldn't see the numbers, for example, but I knew how to read uncontracted Braille, I've just solved my information problem, because we always go on about access to information, particularly in public infrastructure. If you can read, quote Braille signage, or you can read, the numbers on lifts and that sort of stuff, you have just made the whole environment so accessible for yourself.
Yeah, room numbers, all that stuff makes it tremendously easy. And there are times where you can't actually feel the embossed print on a Braille room, on a printed or engraved sign, because it's flat or it's under a piece of plastic. Sometimes if you know your print letters or numbers, yes, you can certainly feel that. But the Braille is, going to cue you into exactly where you need to be, if it's correct. We've all seen where it is woefully inaccurate, I'm sure. But it is a good one. And I wonder if this topic will ever get put to rest, right? Will we ever, find or have folks who say, you know what, Braille is entirely necessary, and how it's become something that's somewhat of an argument is interesting over the last probably 10 plus years, that we've kind of seen even people questioning Braille or the use of Braille, the usefulness or functionality of Braille. I really wonder if people will continue to kind of bring that forward, especially now when you can just truly have more conversational types of auditory discussions with AI and everything. And it's, people say, well, look, now I really don't need Braille. Or does it go the other way?
The other thing too is not to actually, when people talk about Braille, they dismiss the other part of the tactile system, which is tactile maps, tactile graphics. And I think people tend to lug in the tactile bit with Braille. And it's like, well, why are you going on about Braille and it being good or bad, which I think at the end of the day is just wasting time. Also consider like tactile information. So, I've been enjoying the F1 season so far because I've got a tactile map of all the different circuits around the world, so I can enjoy when they talk about particular turns on the circuit with the racing cars. I've got a map of Sydney Airport, so if I get slightly disorientated, I can just bring up my map out of my backpack and check it out. So I just think people have to be really careful when they try and sort of lump everything to this, quote, Braille thing and say that nothing else is worthwhile. Like Rachel said, you've got labelling and you've got all different sorts of things. So, yeah, I just think people, I don't know, they just go to one stream or the another. And I just would like to see like a bit of a medium, thoughtful, thing going on a little bit more.
It's simply a way for us to consume, and we use our hands to touch everything around us anyway. So we're going to be consuming information, whether that's tactile maps or Braille letters. I totally agree. Hopefully you have thoughts. Remember to email us, podcast@humanware.com. And we look forward to hearing from you on this and certainly any other hot takes.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Tips and Tricks segment. Today we're going to look at the Odyssey desktop reader. This is a standalone device that will scan printed documents. We affectionately refer to it as a coffee thermos. So it is a cylindrical device with buttons on the top and an extendable camera arm that comes out of the front. I have the arm extended right now, and I have a document underneath. So there are several modes that you can use with this device. There is auto mode, which as soon as you place a printed piece of paper under the camera, the Odyssey will put it in focus and take a picture. There's manual mode, which allows you to place the document under the camera and then press the capture button to take a picture. There is finger pointing mode, which allows you to point your finger at a line of text and the Odyssey will begin reading there. And then there are some AI updates, which include a bill manager, a reading assistant, and a translation mode. So the bill manager will take a picture of a bill and give you the relevant information like the company name, the amount due, and other associated information. The reading assistant will take a picture of any document, and then it will summarize it and give you the key points. If you want a detailed description, you can then activate that after the Odyssey finishes the summary. The translation mode allows you to take a picture of, let's say, a Spanish document and have the Odyssey translate it into English. The language that the Odyssey translates into is based on your system language. So because my Odyssey is set to English, if I take a picture of a Spanish or French document, the Odyssey will then translate it into English. And those are the supported languages so far: English, Spanish, and French. So I'm going to start out by scanning a document in manual mode. When the Odyssey is powered on, it will take you to the list of modes. And I'm going to press the right arrow, which is on the top of the Odyssey, to get to the manual mode.
Auto mode. Manual mode.
Here's manual mode, and I'm going to press the capture button to take the picture.
Spectrum Savings Bundle and save $360 a year. $70 Mo. Savings based on current promotion versus Spectrum's regular pricing. Commitment that goes beyond savings. We're committed to keeping you connected 100% of the time. Transparency at every step. We're committed to clear and simple pricing with no contracts.
I've pressed the play pause button to stop the Odyssey from reading. So, as we heard here, this is a document outlining promotional services for the Spectrum Internet Service Provider. Now, if I wanted more information, I'm going to turn to AI and see how the document is presented with the Reader Assistant mode. So I'm going to press the back button located on the bottom right of the Odyssey to get to the list of modes.
Manual mode.
It said manual mode, as that is the mode I've just used, and I'm going to press the right arrow to go to the next mode.
Finger pointing mode, AI mode.
Here is AI mode. I'm going to press the capture button to go into the submenu.
Bill manager.
This is Bill Manager. We're going to take a look at that in a little bit, but I want the reading assistant, so I'm going to press the right arrow.
Reading assistant.
This mode will take a picture of the document and then give you a detailed description if you'd like. So I'm going to press the capture button now.
The text outlines a promotional offer from Spectrum for Internet and TV services, highlighting significant savings of $360 per year. It emphasizes the commitment to reliable service, transparent pricing without contracts or hidden fees, and exceptional customer service. The offer is valid for new residential customers and includes details about the services provided, pricing for the first 2 years, and a money-back guarantee. Does it require a detailed description? Yes.
Now the Odyssey has presented us with some options. Would I like a detailed description? The default is yes, or I can press the right arrow to no. In this case, I'm going to press the capture button to get this detailed description of the document.
The content begins with a promotional message about Spectrum's savings plan, which allows customers to bundle services and save $360 annually. It lists the services included in the offer: Internet Premier at $30 per month, Advanced Wi-Fi at $50 per month, and TV Stream at $40 per month. The total monthly cost is stated as $70 for both years 1 and 2.
I pressed the play pause button to stop the detailed description. But as you can hear, that is a very comprehensive review of the document that I took a picture of. Now I'd like to show you translation mode. Translation mode, as mentioned, allows you to take a picture of a document in another language and have the Odyssey translate it. So I have a Spanish document here with some animal facts, and I'm going to have the Odyssey translate those facts into English. I'm going to press the back button to get to the list of modes.
Reading assistant. AI mode.
We're in AI mode. I'm going to press the right arrow to go to the next mode.
Translation mode.
Here's translation mode. I'm going to press the capture button to take a picture of the document.
The Spanish language is recognized. Translate into English languages. 1. The octopuses have 3 hearts. 2 of them pump blood to the gills, while the third is responsible for distributing it throughout the rest of the body. 2. Giraffes have a blue tongue. Their tongue can measure up to 50 centimeters long and is dark blue to protect themselves from the sun. 3. Dolphins sleep with one eye open. This allows them to stay alert to potential dangers while resting.
I pressed the play pause button, but those are some facts that were easily translated from Spanish to English. Now, you have heard that when the Odyssey is recognizing text, there is some nice music that plays. But if you want to change that to a less obtrusive clicking sound, or you can have the Odyssey tell you the progress by voice, or, as is some options offered by companies when on hold, you can wait in silence, the Odyssey has an offer of that as well. So I'm going to show you how to change the recognition sound, and then we're going to look at a fictional bill in the Odyssey's Bill Manager. I'm going to press the menu button to go to the main screen.
Main menu, 99% power remaining. File management.
The menu button is located on the bottom left of the Odyssey. The first option here is File Management, because you can save scanned documents, but I'm going to press the right arrow until I get to Settings.
Reading speed. Voice. Wi-Fi settings. Bluetooth settings. Settings.
And I'm going to press the Capture button to go into this menu.
LED settings. Camera arm settings.
And I'm pressing the right arrow to go through these settings options.
Recognition sound.
Here is recognition sound. I'm going to press the capture button to go into this menu.
Music.
It's set to music. I'm going to press the right arrow to go through the other choices.
Click.
Here is click,
Voice.
voice,
Blank.
and blank, which is silence. I'm going to choose click,
Music. Click.
and I'm going to press the capture button to access this choice.
Set to click. Recognition sound.
Now we've set that to the click, so I'm going to press the back button, which is located on the bottom right of the unit, to go back to the screen of modes.
Main menu. Settings. Translation mode.
It's set to translation mode as that was the mode that we last used, but we're going to go back to the AI mode and to the bill manager.
Auto mode. Manual mode. Finger pointing mode. AI mode.
I'm going to press the capture button to choose this.
Bill manager.
Here is bill manager. So I have a fictional bill placed under the Odyssey, and I'm going to press the capture button to have the Odyssey take a picture.
This is a bill of type utility bill. Bill date, March 27, 2025. Total cost, $35. Company name, National Energy and Water Services.
So that sound means that the Odyssey has reached the end of text on the page, and it has given us the relevant information from the bill. If we wanted more information, we could switch to the reading assistant mode and take another picture and have the Odyssey get more information using AI. So this is the Odyssey and some of the updates that we have just recently added, along with being able to scan and save documents. You now have the ability to translate documents, get information about bills, get summaries of documents, and more. So please stay tuned for further updates. And as always, if you have questions or comments, please send us a note to podcast@humanware.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another segment of the Partners Corner. And for this one, so we tend to talk to people, well, we've been very North America centric the first couple of episodes, and forget that. Nobody needs to just be North American centric. We are going to go across the pond to my right, which, as I sit in Chicago, would be across the Atlantic Ocean. We're going to head over toward Europe. We're going to take a left. We're going to go a bit north, and we're going to stop in Denmark, where we're going to talk with Michael Nielsen from Instralog. How are you, Michael?
Hello, and thank you very much. I'm good. Thank you.
That's awesome. I know you were highly concerned about doing an interview in English, but I'm telling you, we're going to make you a star. People are going to be wondering where you are all over the world. They're going to come find you for your English prowess.
Wow, I hope you're right about that, because it's true. I was a bit nervous doing this interview based on the fact that I'm not sure that my vocabulary would fit in the podcast, but I'm glad that you mentioned it.
Your vocabulary is phenomenal. I think what you should really do is have me on a Danish podcast, and we'll see who has, who has something to make really pick apart, because I don't even know if I can say hello. I could just say hello or something, and I'm sure that's close.
Yeah, it would work indeed. It would work. So you're already one level up.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And can you tell us a little bit about Instralog? So I know you're a technology consultant for Instralog, and can you give us a quick sense of what all that Instralog is?
Yeah, indeed, I can try at least. So we are a small company based just outside of Copenhagen. We are, as you mentioned, a technology company, and we are mainly a distributor of products for the blind and visually impaired. We have a lot of technical equipment, and almost half of the HumanWare product range is here at my office. I'm looking at it right now because it's one of the best manufacturers that we support. And we are 3 employees in total here in Denmark. Our main customer would be the public system here in Denmark, and it's mainly because if you are blind or visually impaired, you are obligated to get products that help in some way or another reimbursed. So the system here in Denmark is that if you're blind, you go to a communication center. We have around 22 different communication centers here in Denmark who are here to help with communication, and communication is a wide thing, but in our range or in our segment, it's product for the blind and visually impaired.
So it's interesting in that, and I think a lot of people are curious about how equipment is obtained in different parts of the world. And so here, in the United States where I am, we have various ways that a blind or visually impaired person receives equipment, and think of humanware equipment for sure for the sense of this podcast. When I'm in school, a lot of that is provided through my local school district. Could be provided through, there are federal funding options. Once I get out of school, though, the landscape changes here. I will have to go and, whether that's through a vocational rehabilitation setting where I can get equipment provided, or a lot of times, especially for somebody who is newer to blindness, who is older, they're needing to purchase those products out of pocket. And as you know, that can be very expensive. Can you talk a tiny bit about, so if somebody goes to a communication center, I'm assuming that's primarily an adult. Is it, and if they do, let's say a humanware product is recommended, how is that product funded? How is that product paid for by the user? Is the user responsible for paying for any of that, or is it something that's provided through the government?
In short, it's provided through the government. So if you're obligated, we have a few laws and a few restrictions that tell us whenever a blind person do have the legal right to get a product reimbursed. But if all that is clear, you get a product reimbursed 100%. So if an adult goes to the municipality or a communication center, they will start a process of working out what would be the best solution for this specific case. So every single time it's individual, on an individual level. They always look at the person in front of them and take action in relation to the person in front of them.
Does it matter if they're working? So if they're, let's say I'm an older adult, I'm 78 years old, a retiree, a pensioner, and I'm losing my vision, can they still get a product?
They can still get a product, yeah. So it's still relevant to know whether or not the person in charge is working or not. If the person is working, it's another process. If the person is working and can use whatever product we are talking about at home as well, it's a third system. It's a third way to go to get it reimbursed. But in the end, it's always 100% reimbursed and paid for by the government.
That's excellent, and I think we've certainly had various bills introduced here in the United States, and the National Federation of the Blind and the American Council of the Blind have been very active in trying to push forward, ways for technology to be funded, regardless of whether you are working, seeking work, or not working. Because a lot of times here it's tied to your kind of employment or looking for employment. One question I had, though, is about training. When a product is given to or funded, not given, but provided to somebody who let's say I qualify for a Braille display, I get a Braille display or a magnifier. What happens from a training perspective? Is that provided by Instralog, or is there another channel of where that training comes from?
We can do it for sure. We do offer training. We just call it an introduction, and that's mainly because the communication center spread around here in Denmark do offer the same kind of training, and they are the experts. So we would always recommend end users to contact the communication center and ask for some kind of training for a product that is either reimbursed or they are able to purchase products themselves, of course, and they can still get the training if they need so. So normally we would recommend the communication center due to their expertise.
That is awesome. Well, one last question that has absolutely nothing to do with technology, but I want your opinion on this. Who is the most famous living person from Denmark that we would know around the world?
Do you know the answer to that?
Well, I have my opinion, but I want yours. You live there. Don't ask me. Who's the most famous current living person from Denmark?
I'm guessing that you're supposed to say me, because I'm now a part of your podcast.
So no, but I like that answer. You
Okay.
You are the most famous, probably right now, living person in the AT world on the podcast. Although I might have to check with Jesper Holten to see what Jesper thinks.
Yes.
But I would say, so if I were to now, and I'll ask you this, I don't know if you would agree, but I think Lars Ulrich would be the most famous, the drummer from Metallica, whose father was a very famous tennis player, I believe would be the most famous Dane that's living. Would you agree with that?
It's hard not to agree with you right now. I think we should stick with me.
Yeah, I think we will. We'll just...
Okay.
Michael Nielsen, technology consultant, Instralog.
Yes. Featuring your podcast and now one of the famous living people from Denmark.
With a perfect command of the English language.
Oh, you're so kind.
Thank you so much for joining, Michael. It's been fantastic, and really we appreciate your time and just being able to highlight a little bit of what Instralog does.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate having been a part of the podcast, and thank you for having me. It was really a interesting email to receive, and now it did happen, and I hope that it'll be successful.
All right, everybody, welcome back to our upcoming shows portion where we'll talk about where you could meet us if you happen to be in the area. We always encourage you to stop by a booth or a table near you to ask questions, to get your hands on the products. April 25th, this one you will not be able to come to a booth near you because I will be presenting virtually to the Illinois American Council of the Blind State Chapter Conference. That will be on April 25th. I believe my presentation, actually I know my presentation, is at 1:30 Central Time. We will be attending the Vision Serve Alliance Leadership Conference. That will be at the Doubletree Resort in Scottsdale, Arizona, April 28th to May 1st. And you can catch us at the Utah National Federation of the Blind State Convention. That will be taking place in Provo, Utah at the Provo Marriott and Conference Center. That will be from May 1st to May 3rd. So please come see us. We certainly do attend other events as well. If you hear we may be in the area, we have a large and fantastic distribution network as we tend to cover on the podcast. So please come see us or our representatives, our distributors, wherever they may be. Ask questions. Don't forget to send your emails or thoughts to podcast@humanware.com. Thank you so much, everybody, and we will see you the third Thursday in May.
If you have comments or suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. Please send them to podcast@humanware.com. That's podcast@humanware.com. We'll see you next month.